Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fully Charged podcast. This show is very, very Dutch in its orientation because we are going to be in Amsterdam in a very few days, and we're very much looking forward to it, and really hope that you can come along if you're in the northwestern European environs. I'm thinking France, northern France, Belgium, western Germany, Denmark. You know, it's all within easy travel distance of Amsterdam. We're at the Rye on the 24th, 25th, 26th. It's going to be brilliant. And so it's really appropriate to talk to someone who is living and working, who is Dutch and living and working in the Netherlands, who is making a difference in an enormously complicated area of home heating and insulation that isn't like a house, because that's quite easy. It might be expensive, but bureaucratically, democratically, quite straightforward. You live in a house, you go, I want to insulate it, boom, you do it, whether you know, or you don't, or whatever. In an apartment block, which, let me just check my stats, about 30% of the Dutch population live in apartments. That's quite high. It's about 14% in the UK. It's 48% in Germany. So it varies, but it's clearly a lot. And I know from experience of friends in France, it's the vast majority of people live in apartments in France, not in houses. So that is a real challenge of how you heat that home and how you insulate it if it's an old building that needs upgrading. It's not straightforward. It's not easy. It's a complicated thing. And my guest today, Yke Rippen, is just really challenging, attacking that problem head on. He's one of the people behind a company called Steeds, and they're based in Delft in the Netherlands, and they organize, well, you'll see in the podcast, I'm not going to explain it because he explains it much better, but it was really intriguing how you do that, because it's a topic that I know is complicated. We've talked to people on the podcast in the past, in Canada in particular, about how you install heat pumps in high-rise apartment blocks and all those sort of things. Basically, the background gist of all this is we need to stop burning stuff, isn't it? That's basically it. That is kind of what drives everything that's going on at the moment. How do you heat an apartment in an old apartment block without burning gas? We need to work it out. It's difficult. It's not easy, but it can be done. And when it is done, it's always, always, always much, much cheaper and more reliable. So without more ado, will you please welcome Yke Rippen from the Netherlands, from Delft, with a beautiful window behind him, onto the Fully Charged Show podcast.
So, Yke, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us on the Fully Charged podcast. This is such an important topic, and it's something that I kind of feel I ignore because, you know, I get involved in my own little world, or we go and see new buildings being built that have really good insulation and really good windows and really good heating systems, and that's wonderful that people are beginning to do that. But we have this, in the sense, the UK and Europe have the same legacy of enormous amounts of buildings that were built between, 20 and 100 years ago that basically are not insulated and not well built and they're not up to standards. Can you explain the organization and the system that you're using in the Netherlands to try and counter that? Because it's a big problem for all of us, I think.
It's complicated and it's a big problem. That's definitely true. Yeah. So if I just look at Holland, we have about 2.5 million apartments, houses in apartment buildings, and a lot of them are built, before the year 2000, and especially until 1973, when the first oil crisis hit. Insulation wasn't the problem. Energy was really cheap, so why would you bother? And anyway, we needed, at least here, we needed 1 million homes for people just after the war, because it was a huge shortage. But now, 30, 40, 50 years later, those houses are very, very inefficient with their energy. And of course, as the energy crisis came along a couple of years ago, people start to really, really feel that in their, in their energy bills. It's just they can't afford to pay for it anymore.
Yeah.
So what we do, our company Steeds, we help building owners, and then especially where there's individual owners in a apartment building. So you have an association of owners, and we help those groups of people along the journey of making their building more sustainable, more energy efficient, and in that process, yeah, I suppose you help the environment as well. But
Yeah.
mostly for them, for those people, it's more important that the energy costs are reduced. So in that respect, they really need that kind of helping hand because they just can't organize it themselves. It's really difficult
Yeah.
and intricate to organize it.
Yeah.
And so now the Dutch government has put in place the possibility to get a loan for these measures. If you want to replace your windows, that will cost you easily €20,000 for an apartment. And in a building, if you have like 150 houses, you're talking 1 or 2 million. There's not
Yeah.
one association of owners who has actually saved up for that. So you need that investment, and the Dutch government's put in place the possibility to get a loan for this. And the brilliant thing about it is that you put the loan on the building itself. So it's not
Right.
an individual loan, which could be problematic if you're let's say a mother of two and no job. How will you be eligible for a loan like that? You won't.
Yeah.
But if you put it on the building and you get the loan through the association of owners, then you can actually pay for it. And the brilliant thing is that if you move out of the building, you don't take that debt with you. It's just
Right.
a new owner who will take on the debt.
Yeah.
So yeah, in that respect, it's really good that you can get that loan. You can get it done. You can get the project done. It's often there's a lot of money involved. 10, 20,
Yeah.
30,000 per house, euro, 20, 30,000 euro per house. And you can replace the windows. You can put good insulation on the roof. You can sometimes even put heat pumps in the building, and in that, then you get the buildings up to levels that you need nowadays to reduce your energy bills and to be ready for another century.
Yes, because I mean, so the two things that I'm intrigued by, because I know of two countries how apartment ownership works. So in the UK, there will be a landlord that owns the building generally, and that could be a local council, it could be a city council, or it could be an individual person. And then you have a lease, which is called a lease. So you're a leaseholder, and you own the lease for that building for a set number of years, usually 99 years or something like that. But you don't own the building and you don't own the ground. But then in Australia, it sounds more like an Australian system, which is it's called the body corporate. So everyone in the building owns part of the ownership of the building.
Yeah,
which
that's
like
more
they share that.
Yeah,
So that sounds like more like, in which case you can make, because in the UK you have to get the landlord to do the work, and then they don't want to do it, or they put up the rent or whatever,
Yeah. We
So
have both pieces as well. We have both really. You have a landlord. Sometimes it's literally a commercial bank or a pension fund who owns the building.
Right.
Sometimes more, let's say, capitalist investors. They're difficult because they basically want to earn money. They really do not want to invest if they can help it. Yeah, that's just how they work. But there's also a good bit of individual ownership. Sometimes the whole building is individually owned by different people, and sometimes only half of it. There's always a mix. So the Australian model is probably more.
It sounds more.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then you can get a loan and do your house up. But it's hard work. It's difficult to organize. For themselves, it's difficult to organize, and we help them along to do this.
But on there's a couple of things I want to ask you. But on a technical level, then the main, like if you went into an apartment block that was built in the 60s, is the quickest, biggest thing you can do to improve that is windows? Would that be fair to say? Is that the main heat losses through the old windows?
If they haven't been done in the last 10 years, absolutely, yes.
Right.
So you put in either double or triple glass. We like to put in triple glass because then you're definitely ready for a future where you can maybe heat your building without using any gas. If you put in triple glass and the right insulation, then you might be able to put a heat pump in a not too distant future.
Right. Because I'm just wondering would you be able to insulate walls? I'm just trying to think of apartments I've lived in the UK where it was very obvious the walls were basically like a giant refrigerator in winter.
Yeah,
They were just hopelessly, I don't know what they were made of. I mean, it's the kind of fabric of the building. I don't know. But is that less of a problem in the Netherlands, or is that still the same for the older buildings?
Definitely. Right. If you have just a brick wall, the insulation value of that is next to nothing. It's really really bad. But you can insulate those walls from the inside or the outside. The inside is very, it's, let's say, difficult because you go into the houses of people and they really don't like that. And from the outside, it's well, it has its problems as well. But technically everything is solvable. If it is feasible, financially, that's the second thing, and that's one of the major aspects for us to make that. You make the report. You go and have a look at the building. What can you do? What can you not do? What is financially feasible to do for this? Houses.
But then the other thing you told me in your notes was that it's 30%. It's about 30% of households in the Netherlands are apartments.
That's right.
So it's quite a high, because I didn't realize how it's much lower here. We're about 14%. Did you say is that right?
Well, that is what I got from the internet.
I don't know, but then because then when I think of people I know in like France, Germany, Italy, they all live in apartments. There's no one. I don't know anyone. I don't know anyone with a house.
Nobody at all.
Maybe it's just my friends.
Okay.
But they all. So it's very common in Germany. It's very common, and in France.
Absolutely, yeah. So and not all of these are individually owned. Like lots of them are owned by landlords, like you said, or other parties. We call them woningcorporaties, which is it's more like social housing. They try to keep rent low, and they do invest in their buildings. But that's not the group that we're after. We're after the individually owned buildings, because they are the ones who have to organize themselves and who have trouble doing that.
Yeah. And so that was interesting, because one of the people I've spoken to, one of the companies I spoke to, are based in Toronto and Vancouver in Canada, who install heat pumps in very large high-rise buildings, and loads of, and that was a huge resistance. That everyone said, "Oh, it won't work, not in an apartment," and they clearly do work, and they've done. Yeah. I mean, is that part of the process that you might look at for heating?
It is where you can, you would install that. At the same time, most of the buildings here in Holland are still heated with gas. And they said it in that show as well. If you have to go from gas to a heat pump, that's more difficult than if an apartment is already electrically heated. Electrically heated is basically, we don't have that. We just don't. And if you have to make the change from gas to a heat pump, that is actually fairly difficult. Also because you need a bigger what's the word? More powerful.
You need a bigger electricity supply. You would need to beef up that.
And that is actually at the moment very difficult in Holland, because with all the wind and solar energy coming in, they say that the grid is kind of full. You can't really get a new connection anymore. There's actually a lot of companies in Holland who want a new connection are on a waiting list. They have to wait 2 years before they can get this new connection. So if the same would go for apartment buildings. So at the moment, what we're doing is we're making them ready for the future when heat pumps are available and and when you can get this new grid connection. So what we do is we insulate the buildings as good as possible, so that even now you still have a gas heater, but you will use only 20% or 30% of what you previously used, which will make the biggest difference. For you.
I know, because one of the other things. So if you an average apartment in the Netherlands somewhere, would it have an individual gas boiler in each apartment, right, as opposed to one central one in the basement or somewhere?
We have both of them. Both of these situations. I'm not sure what how many
the percentages are.
But we have them both, and so the easiest changes are made in the buildings where they have a big gas furnace, I think you call it.
Yes, a furnace. Yeah,
that's the easiest change. But yeah, at the same time, well-insulated home will use a lot less energy, and so
Yes, of
where it all
course.
starts.
Yeah.
That's where it all starts.
Yeah. But then, those, what you've been talking about, and then what your company is doing is facilitating that, and that's really good. And I mean, I don't know, have you done? I don't know how many buildings you've done this in yet, but it's something that's ongoing, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. No, we've done.
Yeah.
I couldn't even exactly tell you how many, but not as many as we would like.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, we've been doing it for a number of years, but it's still in its infancy, really. This whole system.
Right.
I gave you the figures. So the bank
Yes.
we get our loans from last year or 2022, they did 90 loans. And if
Right.
you're talking about 100,000 apartments or apartment
Yes.
buildings that need this treatment, that's
Yeah.
a long way to go. So,
Yeah.
we really need to scale this up. And
Yeah.
many people are talking about scaling it up. Many people are trying and are working on it.
Right.
If I'm not to be bragging a bit, but we are actually doing it. But we need to
Do a lot
increase
more.
our production tenfold or more.
Yeah. Because that's what I mean. One of the things you said, it's going to take hundreds of years, or sort of a long. It's like a hell of a long time at the rate you're doing it now, which is the same here. It's the same in this country.
Yeah, and then I crunched the numbers a bit, and I came out. No, it is actually 100 years that we need to do this. So yeah, that's it's not.
In 100 years' time, everyone will have lovely, warm, cheap-to-run houses, which is crazy, isn't it? Yeah. But I mean, I think the other frustration is that I remember hearing about from other people I've spoken to in the Netherlands, is that you, in a way like us, you have quite a large amount of renewable electricity at your disposal as a country, but you're or not totally, but hugely reliant on importing gas to heat your houses, which is just crazy because the electricity is cheaper. As long as you don't burn gas to generate the electricity.
No, we got totally dependent on gas because they found such a big amount of gas in the north of Holland, and we as in Holland exploited it completely. Rightly so. Why not? It was a big and it helped enormously. The economy was booming for decades because of it. But yeah, now it's there's a whole lot of problems there. First of all, we have earth tremors or earthquakes in the north because of all the gas that was taken out of the ground. So the people living there are actually, obviously really unhappy with it. So they've stopped taking more gas out of the ground over there. So we're importing everything, and then Mr. Putin, of course, got us in a bit of a trouble over this.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to wean ourselves off of this gas. That's a difficult thing to do.
It's really difficult, and I think it's going to take a huge amount of time, and it is a kind of constant background noise to everything we're doing. Is just how, in a way, how well entrenched the fossil fuel industry is in all our lives, and how I mean. I always say you and I would not be sitting here talking like this without the fossil fuel. We've grown up with it. It's part of our.
No, I know that. Yeah, we need the molecules, as they like to say, and we will need them for another 10 or 20 years. But I also when I see the commercials from Shell, how they push their green agenda, I get really angry with this. They're so dishonest about it that does rile me up. I'm afraid.
It's very difficult not to get. And also, I mean, I think it's quite intriguing, from the point of view of our two countries, that Shell was absolutely founded out of the Netherlands and the UK. That's over 100 years ago. I think 1907. The Royal Dutch Petroleum Company joined the Shell Oil Company.
Yeah, that's right.
As one to become one company. So because I used to think it was the other way. I thought Shell was the Dutch part, but in fact Shell was in the UK.
All right. Okay. Yeah.
And we both have quite a difficult history to be proud of in the way we extracted oil from places like Iran and Saudi Arabia. It's not all rosy.
There's so many things that we can maybe not be proud of when it comes to our countries.
Difficult. It's a really difficult thing. But that, I mean, it is one of the intriguing things I thought was the kind of circular nature of the financing of this. So the Dutch government loan you the money to do the building, and then when they've done, can you explain that how they kind of keep the money moving around?
Yeah, so it's literally called a revolving fund. We haven't found a Dutch expression for it. We use the English revolving fund, which basically, it means exactly that. There is quite a large sum of money. I think it's like 500 million euro that is sitting in a big account. And homeowners, not just apartment buildings, but also, if you have a house with a garden, you can...
So you could do it with a house if you own an individual house?
Yes.
All right.
And that's actually much easier, and they're doing many more of those. As apartment buildings are more complicated because of just the complex structure of the decision making there. But so a lot of loans are taken out of that, and when people pay off their loans, the money is basically shuffled back into that fund. So every euro that is taken out can be used again and again. Right. I really don't know how long it takes for the whole fund to rotate, but still, the money is still available, which is, of course, much better than if you just work with a grant. If you're doing up your house and I give you a grant of 2,000 euro, that money is gone. And you use it once and it's gone. So this works better, I think, because it's not quite endless, but you can go on for a long time using and reusing all the money that's available in this fund. Yeah, that works really well.
And I mean, have you got sort of examples now of people who had high energy bills in their apartments, and then you did the work to the apartment, and now, have you got that data where you can now see?
We do. There's a few buildings that have done, like say, they're a quite ambitious program: roof insulation, new windows, floor insulation. All the walls were insulated. And their energy consumption is down to about 20 to 25%. It depends a bit on the owner himself. It's very different if 18 degrees is enough for you, or if you want if you want 22 degrees in your house. That makes quite a difference. But still, their energy consumption on the whole is reduced to about 20 or 25% of previous. We were there last January, and we don't really have any real winters anymore. But they said that the heater has not been on yet. In January,
right.
The triple glazing makes such a difference.
It's such a big,
It's just literally incredible how you can stand in front of a window with triple glazing and be absolutely fine and comfortable. Compared to the single or even double glazing, it's the difference is quite remarkable.
I think it's because I'd love to do if I was a young academic, I'd want to do a study on. In a couple. So my wife is from Australia, so her natural ambient temperature is about 8 to 10 degrees higher than mine. I'd be happy at 18 degrees, completely happy. I wouldn't be struggling. And she isn't. And what's interesting is I think it's always the higher temperature people win in the discussions. I can say, put another jumper on, and she just turns up the thermostat. She doesn't listen to me at all.
Take it off,
But it is, so I think the higher temperature people tend to be the energy hogs. That's going to be my theory. I'm sure it'll upset someone somewhere. But that is it is such a. I mean, it's part of all these huge problems. And actually, what I've learned over the last 10 years, 13 years I've been doing this, is electric ground transport is it is the low-hanging fruit. That's easy. Technologically, that's been solved. Psychologically, still a problem. There's some aspects of, charging ability and all that stuff not in the Netherlands. You've got it sorted there, but everywhere else, people still worry about it. But heating homes has become this really, I think, the real elephant in the room. We need an elephant in the room because they're quite warm-blooded creatures. They heat the building. If we could all have an elephant. But if you look at all the sort of CO2 output statistics, it's agriculture and building heating is really high up there. I mean, the way we do them now.
Yeah, and of course, for people, especially in those apartment blocks, they're not really. The first thought is not CO2 reduction or
No.
something like that. Their first
Keeping
thoughts,
warm.
how keeping warm, and how can I pay my energy bills?
Yeah.
It's when the gas prices and energy prices went like, I don't know, they tripled or something, didn't they?
Yeah.
2 years ago. It just got people absolutely desperate. They were
Right.
not able to pay for, because a lot of these apartment homes are fabulous. They're beautiful, but a good
Yeah.
few of them are actually, people live in them not because they choose to, but there is nothing else for
Yeah.
them, and they're not financially able to move up because houses are incredibly expensive. And
Right.
if you nowadays you literally need two salaries to get a modest mortgage. Uh,
Right.
and
Yeah.
30 years ago, it was different. One salary was
Yeah.
enough to own a house. Nowadays, it's just not. So
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's really the money part is really really important. And for some an homeowners association, it's quite difficult to get yourself organized to that level. And
Yeah.
the loans, I wrote that as well to you when to get a loan is quite complicated because the bank
Yeah.
is just really risk averse. They should
Yeah.
be. They should be. Nobody's helped with a bank that gives out loans at the
Yeah.
top.
Without checking. Yes.
No,
Yeah.
you need to be risk averse. But sometimes, for us to when you're in a project, you think you've got it all sorted, and they come back at you and say,
Yeah.
actually, we need something else, and that can be frustrating. And that is actually,
Right.
I think, the reason why there's too few companies like ours, like my own,
Right.
and too many people basically losing interest or getting discouraged. And
Yeah.
we also get quite a few projects who've literally ground to a halt because of
Right.
the complexity. And if people then lose courage, how do you get them going again?
Yeah.
So I need a lot more new colleagues, not just in my company. I need more companies like mine, and
Right.
in that respect, I really, you have
Yeah.
you have an audience, a big audience, and a lot of people who are like-minded. I know that for sure. So
Yeah.
I would invite everybody to think about maybe that's
Something I could do. Yeah. I mean, because just so I understand, because what I can kind of get hold of is that your company kind of can, in a way, be not the agent, isn't the right word, but the join between the government loan, the complexity of the bureaucracy, the owners of the building, and the actual technical process of changing it. But do you actually employ people or hire people to do the physical work, like the window installers, or is that always that's contracted out?
No, we organize the quotes for the homeowners, and we definitely work with those builders to come to a plan that works, that will work for everybody. We try to get to have a check on the finances. It needs to be within bounds. So that we all do, but we will not then be on the scaffolding and.
Yeah.
But, no, we don't do that. That's especially organizing. So we're not the builders, but we're definitely the people who make sure that the builders and the people who it concerns are joined in that respect. Yeah. We organize that for them.
Right. Because also, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about, I'm trying to remember now on my numerous drives through the Netherlands about high-rise buildings, because I don't know, I'm not picturing them, but I'm sure they exist. I'm talking probably 20 floors or more. I mean, do you have buildings of that scale? Because we do here.
I guess we do, but then those are, I suppose, most of them are a bit newer. So
right,
most buildings we work with is, people come to us. They have a problem. It's leaking.
Yes.
It's cold. Please help us. And very often those buildings are from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s.
Right.
And most of them are, let's say, 4 to 10 layers of houses. Real high-rise buildings. I don't know. Rotterdam has a lot of them. They rebuilt a lot, but those are quite modern. Most of them.
Right.
The highest I think.
I mean, that's a critically important aspect of it. If someone is building a brand new apartment block in a city development that's very swish, are they building those buildings to a much higher standard of insulation and everything? Is that generally the case now?
Oh, absolutely. So since I think 4 years about now, you're not allowed to put gas heating
Right.
in new buildings anymore. It has to
Yeah.
be either heat pumps or district heating.
Right.
It's gas is all phased out of new buildings. So
Yeah.
that helps. Those new ones, you will never have to look at again. They
Yes.
are practically at zero these days.
Right. Because that is okay. So that is a huge advantage you have in the Netherlands to what we have here. So literally about 5 miles from where I live, there's a huge new housing development. All those words are underlined. New housing development. No solar panels, all with gas heating. And I would imagine subpar insulation, brand new. It is absolutely disgraceful. That's not the case here. We are still putting in gas central heating systems in the UK in new houses.
Yeah.
It's the most frustrating thing. I'll just very quickly tell you, I used to do a talk every year, an awards ceremony for the building industry. After dinner, posh evening, where people win prizes, and I would present the winners. And I think I did it for 4 years pre-COVID, and then I've done one since where I was allowed to ad lib, to add a little bit of my own opinion. And I was so rude about the British building industry. I'm no longer doing those events. I've been fired. But it's just so disgraceful, because a lot of the buildings that would win those competitions were amazing.
Yeah.
And were the exception, and were sort of super, zero, not only zero carbon negative buildings, buildings that produce more energy than they consume, or it can be done, and we've seen it being done. So I'm so pleased to hear that that's the case in the Netherlands, that no one's building new houses with gas boilers, basically.
No, there's no gas. There's no gas anymore. That's surprising that Britain has not been able to put that into politics.
Well, the gas lobby and the plumbers and all the gas boiler companies, they're very vocal. I've just heard today that in Ontario, Canada, you can get a $32,000 grant to put in a gas boiler, and a $2,500 grant to get a heat pump. And you go, no, that can't be right. Basically,
around people.
And it's the gas lobby have just said, no, we're going to have gas. But, anyway, that's a whole other topic, really.
Yeah, that's amazing stuff.
But that is yes, because we know of one building site in the UK, in Wales, in fact, in South Wales, where they built what we are calling now affordable homes. So, very basic houses with basic amenities, but brilliantly well insulated, ground source heating, small battery, solar panels on the roof. And the fuel bills for that family, which is for poorer people, are so low, it's just irrelevant. It doesn't matter,
The funny thing is that, economically, it makes complete sense to do this. I just really, I cannot understand why you would still put in build badly insulated houses with. I just don't get it.
Yeah,
because for years the story was, oh, it's a leftist hobby, this whole sustainable thing. It doesn't make economical sense, but now it does.
It does. It's cheaper.
So how is it that people hang on to that? I just don't
know. Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, it is baffling. There's one or two things about my country that are confusing.
It's not your country, Robert. It really isn't.
Yeah. Nowhere's perfect. I'm not saying it. But we've sort of covered the fact that it's going to take a long time. I mean, I think that is a kind of it's very daunting prospect. I mean, the only alternative to that is that the government puts out a fund of like 100 billion euros. Just do them all. And I think that's not likely to happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things in Holland in the next few years, I'm not sure now, but I think about 2030. From 2030, you're not allowed to buy just a gas boiler anymore. It has to be a hybrid.
Right.
So, again, you're slashing your gas consumption by 60 or 70%.
Yeah.
And all those things, they're going the right direction, because it does make economic sense. It's just the laggard, I suppose, I'm not sure what motivates them.
No, well, I think it's money. I'm sure. I'm afraid it's got to be that.
Yeah,
Something somewhere along the line.
yeah.
Yeah.
But do you think it's literally the oil industry who's behind that then, or?
Well, it's hard to think of who else is benefiting from it. Really, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it is anything. And so the one we've had here, which I don't know if you've had that in the Netherlands, is we're going to put hydrogen in the gas system, like the centralized gas system.
Oh yeah, gosh, yeah. They're still talking about it.
Oh, they still, which
No,
is
no, no. It's, there is, heavy industry is one that for them
Yeah.
would work. We have this absolutely ginormous steel mill on the Dutch coast. Got Tata
Right.
Steel, it's international,
Yeah.
name, of course. And they've been talking about putting that on hydrogen for a couple of years now. But yeah, the investments needed for that are enormous.
huge.
That would be one place where you actually can put hydrogen to good use, and it's a single point, so that's not too difficult to bring the hydrogen there.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to put it into your
Into your gas main. Yeah.
I don't think that the heating of houses with hydrogen is going to take off anytime
Right.
soon.
No.
Maybe only for, let's say, like the city of Delft, the inner city is 300-400 years old. You can't
Right.
really insulate those houses without absolutely
Yeah.
ruining them. So that's not
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah.
Maybe those older inner cities would be a good business case for hydrogen, but otherwise, not so sure.
Yeah, but even that, I'm sure there's going to be alternatives, because that is certainly a problem we have here. We do have a lot of very old housing stock. I mean, I grew up in a house that was, I don't know what, 400 years old. So insulation wasn't a big topic 400 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And that's definitely a problem. It is, because the house I live in now was built after, in about the late 1940s, in its timber. It's a wooden house, and it came from Denmark, so it was it was quite well insulated for its time, and we've done a lot more to it. But it's so easy technically to improve it, because it's a timber house, and it's just you can saw a wall down in 2 minutes and put a new wall. It was not hard to do.
No.
Whereas a 500-year-old house, or a beautiful house in Amsterdam or Delft, or all those amazing canal side houses, that's a real. That's hard.
You can these days. You can insulate them from the inside, but you gotta literally want it. And if a building has really old wallpaper in it, then you won't. You don't do it, please.
Yes.
You would ruin that for forever. So that's you shouldn't be doing that. But now a good friend of mine lives in one of those houses on the canal, and they have insulated a house from the inside.
Right.
It works beautifully. I mean, what you do have to think of is, insulation is one, ventilation is the other. Otherwise, your climate inside goes absolutely, you start to grow mushrooms everywhere. You don't want that.
Yes. No.
But that's one of the topics that we address as well in our business, in our line of business.
But I mean, with the majority of housing in the Netherlands is probably post-war, it would be the last 50, 60 years it's been built.
Yeah, well, yes, but there's plenty of houses built between the two world wars.
Right.
Those are really poorly insulated.
Right.
But I suppose the houses with the houses just with gardens and everything, just regular houses, they're much easier to do, because there's one owner who just takes a decision: I'm going to insulate my house or not. Yeah. And those are much easier. It's the apartment blocks it's more difficult in the decision making, and it's basically there are many democracies, of course. If there's 60 people in, so you have 60 different opinions, but to make this decision work, you need a 2/3 majority. And there's a lot of reasons why people could vote against. One is I can't pay for it. That's a very important one. Another one is I just don't believe in it. Or I'm old. I'm going to die soon. I don't.
What's the point?
Yeah, I mean, those people are still. Okay. There are actually people after you. You have kids, grandkids, and everything. Maybe it would be worth.
Yes.
To think of that. Why would you? Why would you not?
Yeah.
But a lot of these apartments, people live in it for 2 or 3 years. They're just not interested.
Yeah.
And so what they are interested in then is am I going to pay more? The answer is yes, you will. It's hardly possible to do this without having to pay more
Yeah.
in your monthly expenses. And then people can, if they are not motivated, they can actually oppose the plan.
Right.
And it would, that would stop it in its tracks. It is
Right.
literally a democracy. So a good part of our role is to motivate people, to show them uh, what the advantages are. Is also very much taking away the fears. People are
Yeah.
afraid what is going to happen. How much am I going to pay? When they first hear about, okay, we're going to make your building more sustainable or more energy efficient, the first thought is, oh my God, how much am I going to pay for this? How much more am
Yeah.
I going to pay for this? And only after you've done all your sums and make sure that it's that your sums are correct. You can say, "Don't worry about it, Mrs. It'll be fine." That's not gonna. That's
No.
not gonna make them feel any better. You have to be really
Yeah.
specific about. Okay, you're going to save this much in your energy bills, etc. So that will help. But one of the funny things that we found when you get to the last bit of the decision-making progress is that people are actually much more concerned about what's going to happen inside their house. People
Right.
are concerned about the curtains, about the paintwork, about the cat.
Right.
You know,
Yes.
they
When you let the cat out.
a 30,000 euro decision, and so those are real fears. You're
Yeah.
going into their homes. You're interfering in their lives. You need to speak to these people and talk to them, hear what their fears are. What are you worried
Yeah.
about? What would it take to turn your decision around? What would it take for you to say, okay, fine, this is actually a good idea, even if it's going to make a lot of noise for a couple of weeks. All
Yeah.
those things, they're very important human factors. Where again, if you live in a single house with a single owner, it's not a problem at all. But if you have an
Yeah.
apartment building, that's a much more human thing to contend with. And
To
then
know it.
a builder just wants to build,
Yeah.
and they're right. They need to build. And the bank
Yeah.
loans, they want to give the loans, but they want to be careful about it.
Paid back. Yeah.
And basically, we make sure that all those lines come together, and we organize it in one neat little package, and
Right.
help those buildings, those associations of owners. Oh my God, it's such a term.
Yeah.
In Holland, we call it a VVE. It's much shorter.
Right.
But so we help them on their way, and
Yeah.
I do think we're good at what we're doing. We still need to straighten our processes. We have to make it shorter, because at the moment the process takes like a year and a half.
Right. Before you even do anything. Now, just to get
That's,
the right.
that's a long time. And we really need to bring the amount of time spent on that. We need to get that down. We need to get our processes right. We need to get the bank more in line, and they really want to help too. I've even yesterday I spoke to the one of the funds, the heat fund. I spoke to them, and they try as hard as they can, but they have rules to follow. If it's not rules, then it's European rules, and the bankers are, like I said before, they're risk averse, and they should be.
Yeah.
So it's our job to make sure that the risks are, I don't know,
acceptable. Yeah. But I mean, because are there other countries, other European countries, are there companies like yours doing the role that you're playing in the Netherlands? I mean, is that happening elsewhere? I'm not, because it's the first time I've heard of it. It makes so much sense. It's such a good idea.
It does make sense, and I'm pretty sure that Belgium is a good way, trying to do the same things. And I also know that in Germany, it's actually much more common for these apartment buildings to get a loan. There's commercial banks taking care of those loans. And the commercial bank is actually trying to get a foothold now in Holland as well, but their interest rates are quite high. So they are used because they're much, let's say, quicker. Interest rates are high, and very often they're used for, let's say, more modern buildings who just want solar panels. You get a smaller loan, it's all done very quickly and no problem. But the projects that we do are much more integral, much more complicated, and definitely a lot more money per house. You you can't really do a 20 or 30,000 euro loan and have a 6% interest. That's just
Yeah, yeah,
that's impossible to pay. That's just too
yeah.
much. But
So that's, I mean, I think the only other thing I can imagine where there is a kind of correlation between electric vehicle ownership and what you're doing is, I'm going to use the only Dutch names I know. Mrs. Van Ness, in her apartment that has been done up, has got new windows, and she's noticed a marked reduction in her fuel costs. And then she meets Mrs. I can't think of another Dutch name, Mrs. Kloppenberg. And and they talk at the supermarket, and they go, "Oh, I've just had to pay my gas bill; it's huge." And Mrs. Van Ness goes, "Oh, I don't pay a gas bill anymore; I only pay this much." That conversation around communities where people talk to each other. Definitely. I mean, that happens with electric vehicles. It's been studied. You know, one person in the street gets an electric vehicle, and a year later, there's 3 electric cars in that street. Yeah. And I'm just wondering whether that takes, you know, in a sense, because it's such a huge challenge to, if you're in that, you know, you're in an apartment block and you're not a billionaire. I think we focus far too much attention on billionaires. They're totally irrelevant. It's people who, you know, normal people with normal incomes. That's a 30,000 euro loan on top of everything else you've got to do. It's a big challenge.
They have a mortgage that is already, you know, expensive. You know, like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment will set you back like 300,000 euro in the city in the west of the Netherlands. In the east, it's a bit cheaper, but not a whole lot. So you know, it's an enormous amount of money to, you know, invest extra into your house. But of course, the value of your property goes up a lot as well.
Yeah,
that's in the bricks. You know, you can't really, you know,
you can't take it with you. No,
you can't eat it for sure. So you know, what are you going to do? To have a house that is more comfortable and warmer and lower energy bill and more valuable, that's absolutely fine. But your running costs will go up. That's a fact. You know, it's kind of a blessing in disguise that energy bills have gone up so much, because people now are experiencing like, oh my God, I am already paying 100 euro more a month. I better find a way of, you know, balancing,
reducing that.
Yeah, and if what we find is that when these buildings, well, the people in charge of those buildings come to us, very often their maintenance plans are actually not good enough. You know, they have everybody needs to have a maintenance plan so that you can look at the maintenance that you'll need in the next 10, 15 or 20 years. And usually they're just not up to scratch. The replacement of windows is definitely not going to be in those plans. So people are saving up for it, and that's why everybody's like, "Oh, how am I going to do this? I cannot. You just cannot pay 20 or 30,000 euro all of a sudden." So we start out to make a maintenance plan for those buildings that is up to scratch, and then people see that if I am going to follow this, just maintenance, nothing, no upgrade, nothing, just maintenance. That people see, okay, I actually need already to pay 60 or 80 euro more a month. And if I go with the upgrade, I'm going to pay 60 or 80 or maybe 100 euro extra as well. But the difference is just maintaining the building or having a huge upgrade. That makes the choice a lot easier.
Right.
All of a sudden, the price difference between those two is not so big. Just maintenance is just maintenance. A big upgrade is, how much better is that?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think it's a very brave and challenging thing you've done. I mean, because it isn't a glossy, it's not a shiny new electric car or fabulous wind turbine. It's like gritty. You've got to sort this out. It's complicated. It requires this annoying thing called democracy. You know, I'm very, very impressed, Yke. I mean, because I could not do what you do. It is really challenging and really and really important. I mean, I think that's the thing. It's not.
It is, but it's so rewarding. You cannot imagine
good.
rewarding it is when the project is done, when people are happy that it's happened.
Right.
You will always get bumps on the way, and sometimes the relationship gets a bit. People get annoyed or impatient. You know, everybody wants it done last week, preferably. We tell them now at the beginning, look, please make sure the time frame is going to be a year or a year and a half. we've learned about these things as well. We thought that we could do
Yeah.
it much faster, not so much. So
Yeah.
we've learned a lot in the last couple of years as well. But yeah, the rewards are just it is very rewarding to literally go past the building, see what has happened, and go like, man, we've done that well, and people are happy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
good.
great.
Yeah.
No, well, thank you. Thanks so much for explaining, because it's a complicated and intricate, complicated issue, and it's not an easy explanation. But that was great. Thank you very much.
You're absolutely totally welcome.
Great stuff.
I just hope that I can, that the story has inspired a few people in the Netherlands and elsewhere to
elsewhere. It's needed everywhere, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. It would be brilliant if we could get more colleagues doing this. Like, we really do not have to be afraid of competition in this market. The market is so deep. There's so much demand. There's so much work.
Right. Yeah. No, that's definitely a good take. You're only going to be happy if other people move into your patch, if you like.
But it's true, because it does worry me that how much energy is going into it, and comparatively few apartments have actually been helped so far.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, good luck with it in the future, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Thanks so much. Well, that would be
okay.
Great. I will see you in Amsterdam anyways.
Yes, looking forward to it.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. Amazing to talk to Yke about that. Really, God, it is complicated, and I'm trying to simplify it as much so that the majority of people can understand what needs to be done, because it's a very, very, very big topic. When people talk about, I can't have an electric car because I live in an apartment. Yeah, you can, and lots of people do, but also, how do you heat your apartment? Maybe that's more important. Maybe that's the first step, is to make sure your apartment is beautifully insulated and very, very cheap to live in. That's kind of quite an important thing. Anyway, that's enough. Do come along to Amsterdam if you're listening / watching this very soon after it comes out and you're around that area. It's going to be an amazing show. Got some incredible talks there. The team have worked so hard putting it together. There's quite a lot of vehicle unveilings taking place, which is very exciting. So there's some vehicles there that you will not have seen before on the streets, Strasses, rues of the European area. That's all. I'll shut up now. As always, if you have been, thank you for listening / watching.